Hi everyone, my name is Elizabeth Arellano, and this is mine and Jaden's presentation. We chose Chicago Row Team, a crew of police and gang members pulled together. And this is about the Chicago police teaming up with a row team, the first all African American row team that was in Chicago as well. A brief history on both of the groups. There's the Chicago police officers. The Chicago police officers were actually joined the original Manly crew in 2019 to row together. This was after they were invited by the team captain R. Shay Cooper. This is the first time the Chicago Police Department joined an all African American team, and it wasn't known in Chicago because of all the violence and the racial tension between the police department and the stereotypes between the African Americans and Chicago. The police officers that joined were not publicly named. I wasn't able to really find exactly in detail the name of the police officers, but ones that did come up in videos and certain articles that I found was Lieutenant Daryl Williams and Officer Lewis Green. Officer Lewis Green, actually, they called him Big Lou, and he actually came out in an interview and stated how he knew that some of these players or team members had criminal histories, but it was his it wasn't his expertise, so he kind of listened to them regardless of the history. The Manly High School team, the team captain was R. Shay Cooper, and R. Shay Cooper actually did a memoir, and he made a movie that has all the details on how they became the team. I believe it was 1999, and in the 1990s. The team grew up in a west side of Chicago in 1990s. Now, R. Shay Cooper does talk about how he would pass through school and he would pass three different gang territories just to get to school. The first All American, they were the first all African American high school rowing team in the U.S. Rowing became a form of escape from gang violence for them. They were different gang members from different gangs that joined into this rowing um, team, and eventually they left the gang life out of that, and it was a way to come together. Most of the teammates had family in gangs, or at some point they were in jail or prison themselves, and still continued to meet together 20 years later and um, become the first to make an integration with the Chicago police officers. A little timeline to the events. In 1998 to 1999, the formation of the Manly High School rowing team was formed. In 2018, the team reunites at a funeral of one of their coaches, and this is the first time they got together and talked about initially initiating in the Chicago Police Department. In 2019, the team captain Cooper asked the Chicago Police Department to join them, where they formed a bond with all the players. In 2020, the documentary Most Beautiful Thing came out, and gave a glimpse of the outside of a strong message of the unity and the mark of a new relationship of opposite lifestyles. How they met and initial impressions. They met when Cooper decided to let the other players know it would be great to invite the police officers to train with them in their last rowing competition. The officers had some doubts, but eventually joined them to train for the 2019 row race. At first, Alvin Ross was not open to the idea, and Alvin Ross was one of the players. He is one of the players who had a criminal background, and so he kind of thought of police officers as not really a part of their team, but later became good friends with Officer Lewis Green, who they called Big Lou. The original rowing crew was skeptical, and had some judgment towards them due to past traumas. Cooper talks about how he remembers being slammed into police cars, and most of them remember being racially profiled, even if they didn't commit a crime. and police officers mixed their worlds with the teammates, some which had criminal records but later experienced emotional connections and friendships with understanding. They began to understand each other and open up to understand each other. So in this transitional model, we have P1, which is the Manly Row team, P2, which is the Chicago Police Department. And in the transition model with P1 and P2 shows communication and dynamics both with the Manly Row team and the Chicago police officers were both the senders and receivers in the transitional model. And their face-to-face training in Row made them share conversations to give each other a chance to get to know one another regardless of the stereotypes in their past. The noise between them showed some of the teammates that had traumas, mistrust, different interpretations and memories with the Chicago Police Department as when they were younger. And the noise between the police officers and the teammates was that there was stereotypes due to their line of work, the different situations they had with others from the west side of Chicago, and the fact that some players had criminal history. Their encoding and decoding was that the officers, P2, encoded messages of openness with no judgment and joining their team while still allowing the Manly teammates to give them directions because that was their field of experience. So, it wasn't about power. It was more about the openness to receive that. The encoding and decoding for the teammates, P1, was that regardless of their past experiences with the police department, they wanted them to see them as human beings, as fathers, as parents, and show them that it doesn't have to always be a war between them. They were a team and they were committed to becoming a team. So the relationship of enrichment through cognitive focus or empathy, I would be referring to Fit Stuff, Our Brains at War, the connection between the relationship of the Manly teammates and the Chicago officers. On the cognitive perspective, with Fit Stuff would be how crew members began to understand that not all officers were violent against them. In Fit Stuff, it states that the brain's amygdala and mirror neurons are wired to detect threat and favor in group loyalty, often unconsciously. This was the teammates' brain unconsciously feeling vulnerable to the officers due to their past traumas and just being police officers. This also helped the officers understand why some of the crew was hesitant about allowing them to train with them and be on their team. This mental mirroring allowed both sides to reverse their assumptions and not be biased due to their past history and events. Some obstacles and differences. The differences within both the teammates and the police officers. There was racial profiling and police brutality that caused stereotyping. Keeping up a guard with the police officers coming from different social worlds and cultural worlds. Cooper states that he was slammed on a police car when he was younger and there was no need to commit a crime. It was just a racial profiling. Officers often had the job to keep communities safe and high expectations without realizing that some teammates had tried to stay out of the gang life. Despite these differences, they formed an alliance, and rowing became a positive thing for them both. Officers began to see more than just the biased side. They saw fathers and humans. They had good in them and with good intentions, regardless of past and differences. So on this slide, the Moore Circle of Conflict, Manly Rowing Team and Chicago Police Officers. There's the different kind of conflicts, such as data conflicts, relationship conflicts, language conflicts, values, interest, and structural conflicts. A lot of these were harder to kind of put in here, but so data conflicts is misinformation interpretation between both groups. Relationship conflicts, they didn't trust each other and had strong emotions towards one another due to real life circumstances. Language conflicts, different backgrounds and family backgrounds. They had different ethnic and cultural differences. They needed to defend where they came from, and the interest was more, some were interested in defending their family, as some were interested in defending what they believed in, which was the police officers. Structural was power, control, and equality. in this slide, how they navigated these differences. Officers didn't judge. Crew members um, showed their experiences and shared rowing enjoyment, and that's the empathy and emotional safety they both came to combine and realize they both had. In this slide, there is strategies from Crucial Conversations from Gurney. And the three strategies that I decided to use was move to action. There is the trust was built, then the team moved towards their shared goal of rowing. They clarified the role of the boat to make them work as a team. Turned judgments into stories. They listened to each other's stories and understood each other's emotions, understood why there was so much hesitation on both sides due to the racism and stereotypes. Both sides used each other's past to bring up concerns to be solved and seeing each other's fears and letting others in. The AMMP was another strategy I used. Some teammates asked why they should trust to work with these police officers. There was mirroring when there was some tension at first, fear, and that's fear due to the trauma that they had, and sharing their past, making and building safety for the discussions and emotional state without judgment for both sides. For the strength in their relationship and bond, I decided to go with week 5's video of Harvard Principles of Negotiation. These principles really resonated with their story. Principle number 1: separate the person from the issue. This is something they did and they came from two different worlds, and they still made it work with each other. Principle number 2: they focused on interests, not positions. Even though they were police officers and had so much position, so much power, they focused on building this relationship with these team members regardless of their past. Principle number 3: generate options for mutual goals. The police officers had other goals and wouldn't have thought they were going to be invited to join a rowing team, but once they were asked alongside with the Manly team, they made a great team and worked together despite their differences. And principle number 4 is insist on using objective criteria based on decision and agreements on fair standards rather than personal performance. There was some hesitation from some of the teammates, but eventually they wanted to do what was fair and welcome the police officers into their world of rowing, even though they ended up showing them different techniques in rowing and introduced them to the sport. And later on, they became really good friends and were able to build that communication and that bridge into possibly lowering racial tension and stereotyping. There's some more examples on the principles, as you can see here. And this is the strategy or the video I decided to use to show how they strengthened their relationship bond with each other.
Hi everyone, it's Jaden, and for my section of the presentation, I'll be starting off with the 7 steps for effective problem solving and how that applies to this case study. So for step 1, we have identified the issue. A statistic that they kept returning to was 1 in 3 kids in West Side Chicago won't live past the age of 18. This is a very horrible, horrible fact. But they touched on it a lot and how it would affect their lives. They talked about how their teachers would tell them this statistic and how it implemented a lot of fear in their lives, and it made them feel very hopeless in their environment. Um, and so, yeah, so that's what I would probably consider the biggest issue within this conflict. Um, and on top of that, also problems with the police and wanting to address that relationship. Um, so for step 2, understand everyone's interests. A quote that was in this case study by Arshay Cooper was, "I'm so tired of kids killing kids in my community. I'm so tired of hearing misconduct of the police in my community. So how do we fix it?" Um, I think this kind of encompasses or includes both sides of this conflict where you have kids killing kids in the community, which is sort of why the police are there in the first place, to manage that But then also on the other side of it, you have misconduct of the police, which is just unfair treatment towards like some of these gang members. Um, and they're asking the right question, which is how do we fix that, which moves straight into step three, which is listing all the possible solutions. Um, so Arshay Cooper, he presented the idea that they invite the Chicago police to come and row with them. This is the only solution that they really bring up in this case study. I'm sure there were others that they thought of, but it wasn't on camera or it wasn't in the report. So this is the only possible solution that we are given. Um, but we did see the evaluation of options, which is step four. That was on camera in the documentary. And there was a lot of skepticism amongst the crew members because they all have their own experience with the police force and how they were treated. Um, so yeah, they were very skeptical about how it would go, or a little bit of fear um, kind of driving that decision. They didn't want to do it, but in the end, they decided that that exchange of perspectives would be completely worth it, and it would be super inspiring to, or it could have a lot of influence on other police force in Chicago, or it could have influence on other people growing up in West Side Chicago. So, and then for step five, they did agree to invite the Chicago police force and teach them how to row. So they did select that option. And for step six, document the agreements. They did a documentary, and the agreements were all in the documentary. They all sat down in a room and they agreed on camera that they were going to follow through with this. Um, and yeah, step seven, as far as like contingencies and monitoring and evaluation, I would say that so the initial agreement was that they were going to just train the police, but then they ended up wanting to take it a step further. So they ended up signing up the crew and the police officers for a race where they'd all be in the same boat. So they did take it a little bit of a step further, which was awesome. But I would say that action of signing was a bit of a contingency, but it also was just solidifying that agreement even more that we are going to follow through with this and we are going to make an impact. So relating this to our class material, first off, we have in Grenny's Crucial Conversations in his chapter Make It Safe, he talks about how conflict often stems from fear or misunderstanding, which definitely applies to this case study because there's a lot of fear and misunderstanding surrounding these gang members' childhood and their upbringings. They grew up in an environment which taught them to fear police or think of police as their enemies. They have personal experiences to draw from where they were mistreated by police and it causes them to have trust issues or trauma. Um, so this definitely presented an issue, and especially having these experiences and becoming motivated to address the issue was probably the biggest conflict. But um, we also have perspective taking, which was huge for this. It was all about perspective taking between the police and the gang members, the crew members. But then also, they're trying to give the viewers and the readers perspective as well. That was definitely their goal. Um, and I put down fast versus slow thinking um, for this. Not being driven so much by emotion, which is fast thinking, and taking the time to consider or be considerate and think uh, things a little bit more thoroughly. An example of this is when they were deciding what they wanted to do or how they wanted to go about addressing this issue. And their initial reaction to involving the police and rowing with them was to resent it and to cast that idea out because there was a lot of emotion behind it. They have a lot of experiences that they're drawing from. Um, but after thinking about it and thinking about the impact that that would have, they decided to go with that route. Um, Similarly, we have field of experience, which is something that we have to consider, which is like they have all of these experiences that affect this conflict and their communication with each other. Um, so, yeah, just being aware of that and the impact that their experiences have on the issue is important. And then empathy versus sympathy. This is definitely it's a lot about um, being empathetic towards each party. Um, they're being very vulnerable throughout the documentary and throughout the case study. Um, they're opening up to each other they're opening up to each other, and on the other end, the receiver has to be empathetic and kind of put themselves in their shoes um, to achieve this goal and the solution. To make it impactful, they have to be willing to understand the other side. So, okay, and on this slide, we're going to be talking about how this conflict actually formed a strong relationship between the two parties. So I have quotes from this case study, and I put before and after quotes. Before meaning before that they got in the boat together, did the training, did the race, and then after is after the fact, once they finish the race. Um, so in the before column, they're mainly talking about their perceptions of, or the gang members' perceptions of the cops. Um, so yeah, you grow up looking at them as an enemy, and in my community, we have no relationship with the cops. Um, and then in the after column, the one that really stood out to me was once they came out in their uniforms, um, or once they came out of their uniforms, they were regular human beings. They were no different than anybody else on the street. We were able to relate to them, kick it with them, crack jokes, have a ball. Um, and then also, we don't get to see them in that element or in that light sometimes. Um, so basically, these two quotes are talking about their previous perceptions and how they're now realizing that they're wrong. Um, Getting in the boat, now we're a part of a team, or now we're part of the same team. They found a common, or sorry, they found a mutual purpose, and they found a solution that would benefit the both of them and benefit their community and touch viewers. Um, so once they were working towards that goal together along that journey, they found unity, and they were able to do things like crack jokes with each other or hang out with each other, um, have a good time, and communicate in a healthy way. So, yeah, after this conflict, after they found a way to solve it and get along and prove something to their community, they were able to build such a strong and healthy relationship. So, why does this case study matter? It is a message to their community, which is West Side Chicago. Uh, they did this by reaching a common goal through unity, building a bridge between these two parties to send a message to people who are still struggling. Um, and they documented their conflicts, the obstacles that they had to overcome. So it could be an example and a guide to these youngsters who are still struggling. Um, it teaches everybody the importance of perspective taking and empathy. This can be done in the workplace, where if you work in a diverse, for like a in a diverse office or with diverse clientele, um, having this knowledge and how to approach that, because you could essentially use the boat as a metaphor. Um, and when you're working in an office with all your coworkers, you guys are all on a boat together. Um, and some things that I wrote down were Ken's sensitivity. So Ken is the coach who um, he was the one that coached the gang members in the boat, or in rowing. So there was a moment in the case study where they mention how he felt that he was a little insensitive. He didn't really consider things that he thinks that he should have considered. Um, and some of the gang members also commented on this, saying that he would pull up in his Jeep to the school, and if anybody sees a white person, they immediately think they're cops. So they were telling him, like, you can't be pulling up on a school like that, or else you're gonna get shot. Um, so yeah, and then cops and gang members working together, definitely a lot of perspective taking and empathy going on there, because they were on opposite sides of an ongoing conflict that lasted generations, um, and that continues to uh, be a conflict. So them working together and show or is proof and provides hopefulness that this can be done anywhere. Um, and the last message is, despite our differences, we can still find a mutual purpose. Um, even though they're on opposite sides of the spectrum, they found rowing and found out that it was a way that they can convey the message that they both want to convey. On this slide, I have some recommended research. I put down two of R. Cooper's books that he wrote, and then I also put down A Most Beautiful Thing, the documentary. It's on Peacock and it's on Amazon Prime, which is how I personally watched it. But yeah, I would definitely recommend it because it goes a little bit deeper into this stuff. Um, and there's a lot more to the story than just the conflict between the cops and the gang members. It also dives into how the gang members were also from different gangs in different neighborhoods, so there was also conflict within that. So definitely a good read, and or definitely a good watch and probably read. But yeah, I'd definitely give it a look. Okay, and then for this last slide, these are all of our references that we use. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you guys enjoyed, and looking forward to some of your comments.